Hello there, how are you tonight? Imagine waking up. Not to freedom, but to responsibility. That never really ends, no matter how tired you are, no matter how your body feels, because your life doesn't fully belong to you. You don't choose when to rest, you don't choose how much you keep, and you certainly don't choose the path your life will take. The sun rises, and with it, another day of labor begins, fields that are not yours, work that never truly finishes, and a quiet understanding that this is how it will always be, and the strangest part is, everyone around you accepts it, not because it's easy, but because there is no other way, before we step deeper into this world. Take a moment to gently like the video. Subscribe if you enjoy these calm journeys, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight. It's always a little amazing seeing how these quiet stories connect people from so many different places. Now, let's slowly walk into a medieval village and experience what it was truly like to live. As a peasant, you are born into a world that has already decided everything for you, before your first breath fills your tiny lungs, before your eyes ever open to see the dim light of the world around you. Your future has already been quietly written by forces far beyond your understanding. There will be no moment when someone asks what kind of life you wish to live. No choice waiting patiently for you when you become old enough to speak, no road branching ahead with different futures to consider. Because the moment you are born, your path is already laid beneath your feet. If your father works the fields, then one day, so will you. If your mother kneads coarse bread beside the fire, then one day your sisters will too. And if your family has lived and died in this same patch of muddy earth for generations, then you will likely do the same. The village where you are born is small, a scattering of crooked wooden cottages huddled close against the wind, surrounded by endless farmland, dark forests, and dirt roads that seem to lead nowhere. There are no towering cities nearby, no golden palaces, no adventures waiting just beyond the horizon, only mud, only smoke, only labor, and the distant sound of tools striking earth from sunrise until dusk. As a child, you learn quickly that survival comes before comfort. There are no carefree mornings, no toys carved for amusement, no long years of innocence untouched by duty, even when your legs are still small and your hands still clumsy. Adults begin teaching you the rhythm of work: carry water from the well, gather firewood from the woods, watch the chickens, feed the pigs, mind the younger children. At first, your tasks seem simple, but they are never meaningless. Every hand matters here, every person, no matter how young, serves a purpose, because in this life, idleness is dangerous. A lazy child becomes a weak worker. A weak worker becomes a burden, and burdens, in a world this fragile, can destroy entire families. You grow not with dreams, but with expectations, and slowly, without anyone ever saying it aloud, you understand something strange. The adults around you do not ask if you are happy, they ask if you are useful. Strength is praised more than imagination, obedience more than curiosity, silence more than questions, because questioning your place in the world changes nothing. The blacksmith's son will become a blacksmith, the miller's daughter will marry and work, and the peasant's child. Spring brings planting, summer brings labor, autumn brings harvest, winter brings suffering, and just as surely, birth determines destiny. As the years pass, your body hardens quickly. Childhood ends early here. By the age when children elsewhere might still be chasing games through fields, you are already learning the weight of wooden buckets and farming tools in your hands. Your palms blister from rough wood, your knees bruise from stone floors, your feet toughen against mud and frost. You are taught not to complain. Pain is ordinary, fatigue is ordinary, wanting things you cannot have is ordinary, and perhaps most ordinary of all is the quiet acceptance shared by everyone around you. Because no one in your village believes life is meant to be easy, life is meant to be endured. The elders speak of hardship the way others speak of weather, matter-of-factly, without bitterness, without surprise. This winter was kinder than the last. The crops could have failed worse. At least no one starved. These are considered blessings, and as night falls over the village, when darkness blankets the crooked rooftops and smoke drifts into the cool sky, you lie awake on a straw mattress beside your family, listening to soft breathing in the darkness, and maybe, just maybe, you wonder if life exists beyond this place, beyond the fields, beyond the forest, beyond the endless sameness of tomorrow. But such thoughts are dangerous luxuries, because morning will come quickly, and when it does, the sun will rise over the fields once more, and your life, the life chosen for you before you were even born, will begin again, not because you wish it, not because you agreed to it, but because this is simply the world you entered, and in that world, freedom is not something peasants are born expecting, it is something they barely even imagine. The night never feels long enough, no matter how exhausted your body becomes, no matter how deeply sleep pulls at your bones. Morning always arrives too quickly, or rather, before morning, because in the life of a medieval peasant, your day begins long before the sun has even considered rising. You wake in darkness, not to birdsong, nor to golden rays warming your face, but to cold, a deep, biting cold that settles into the room through the long night and wraps itself around your body beneath rough wool blankets. Your eyes open slowly to near total blackness. The only light comes from faint orange embers glowing weakly in the hearth, their warmth nearly gone. Around you, the house is silent. You hear your family breathing softly nearby, packed close together beneath blankets and straw bedding laid across the hard floor. There are no separate rooms, no privacy, no space to retreat into, only one small shelter, shared by everyone. Sometimes even the animals sleep inside when winter becomes cruel. The smell is heavy, smoke trapped in the rafters from last night's fire, damp earth beneath your feet, wet wool drying slowly in the corner, ash and sweat and the faint scent of livestock. It is not pleasant, but it is familiar, and in this life, familiarity becomes its own strange kind of comfort. You rise slowly, joints already aching from the previous day. Even before standing, your body protests. Your shoulders ache first, then your knees, then your back. You are young. Perhaps younger than someone should feel this tired, but peasant life wears the body down quickly. There is no lingering beneath blankets, no stretching, no peaceful waking, because every moment of daylight matters, and every wasted second is stolen from the labor ahead. Someone kneels to stir the dying fire. The room glows dimly, faces begin to emerge from shadow. Your mother wraps herself in wool and begins preparing the morning meal. Your father pulls on worn boots stiff with dried mud. Children rub sleep from their eyes. No one speaks much. The morning is too early for conversation. Outside, the world is still. The village sleeps beneath darkness and mist. The stars remain overhead. The moon hangs pale above the rooftops. And yet, one by one, small lights begin flickering inside nearby cottages across the village. Other families wake just as yours does, because everyone rises together. Everyone follows the same rhythm, not by clock, not by bell, but by necessity. You step outside into the freezing dawn air. Your breath clouds before your face. The earth is wet beneath your feet, slick with dew and mud. The cold bites at your skin, and above you, the sky begins its slow transformation. Black softens into deep blue, blue fades into pale silver. The first faint glow of dawn stretches over the distant hills, but the day has already begun. Before anything else, the animals must be tended, the chickens must be fed, the pigs checked, the goats watched, the water buckets filled. You carry pails from the well with sleepy arms, the wood pressing painfully into your palms. The water sloshes cold against your fingers. Then come the tools, wooden hose, iron blades, rope and baskets, everything gathered in silence. Everything prepared before the first true light touches the earth, soon. You walk toward the fields, and there they wait, stretching endlessly into the fading mist. Dark and damp beneath the pale dawn, for one brief moment. Standing there in the cool silence. With fog curling over the earth and birds beginning softly overhead, the world feels peaceful. Almost beautiful, the kind of beauty that exists only in stillness, only in moments before the burden begins, then labor starts, and the peace vanishes, hands sink into frozen soil, tools strike dirt, voices call quietly across the fields, an hour after hour. Your body bends and lifts and strains beneath the growing light, planting, digging, pulling, carrying it again and again, until the motions stop feeling like choices at all, they become instinct, a rhythm older than memory itself, and perhaps the strangest part is this: no one questions it, no one curses the dawn aloud, no one wonders why life must begin in darkness only to be spent in labor, because this is simply how the world is. Your father rose before the sun, his father before him, and his father before that, generations of tired hands waking in darkness. Walking the same paths, touching the same soil, and one day, your children will do the same. There is something haunting in that thought, a quiet sadness buried beneath the routine, the realization that your mornings, your exhaustion, your aching limbs before sunrise, are not temporary hardships, they are not leading toward something greater. This is not suffering before reward. This is simply life, permanent, predictable, unending, and maybe that is the hardest truth of all, not the labor, not the cold, not the aching in your bones. But knowing tomorrow will be exactly the same, and the next day after that, and the next, until one morning, you rise before the sun for the final time, without ever knowing it is your last dawn, but that day is far away, for now. The sky brightens overhead, birds sing across the fields, the mist begins to lift, and your hands return once more to the earth, because morning has come, and whether your body wishes it or not, the work has only just begun. For most of your life, the world is smaller than you can imagine, not because the earth itself is small, but because your life never allows you to see much of it. You are born in one village, you grow in one village, and if fate is ordinary, you die in that same village, to a medieval peasant. The world does not stretch endlessly with possibility, it stretches only as far as your feet can carry you. And even then, not very far. The land around you is everything, the fields, the woods, the stream, the dirt roads winding between cottages and fences. These are not simply places, they are your entire universe. Beyond them lies mystery, perhaps another village, perhaps a distant market town. Perhaps forests so deep no one dares wander far into them, but for many peasants, such places remain stories rather than experiences, because leaving is not simple, travel is slow, dangerous, exhausting, roads are little more than muddy tracks carved into earth by carts and hooves, rain turns them to rivers of filth, winter freezes them solid, bandits, wild animals, and sickness wait beyond familiar paths, and more than anything else, you have responsibilities here. The land does not care if you wish to wander. The crops still need tending, animals still need feeding, wood still needs gathering. Every day away from work risks hunger later, and hunger is always waiting. So most never leave. Years pass with the same horizon greeting you every morning, the same church bell ringing in the distance, the same field swaying in the wind, the same narrow road cutting through the village center. Eventually, you know every inch of it, every stone in the path, every crooked tree at the edge of the woods, every fence post leaning slightly from age. You know where the ground dips after rain, where mushrooms grow in autumn, where foxes sometimes steal hens in the night. The land becomes familiar in a way few modern minds could understand. It is not scenery, it is companion, teacher, master. Its moods shape your life more than any king ever will. A gentle spring means hope, too much rain means rot, too little means drought, an early frost means fear. You watch the sky constantly. Clouds matter, wind matters, the smell in the air matters, because survival depends on understanding the land's every whisper. And yet, for all your closeness to it, none of it belongs to you. That may be the cruelest part. You spend your life touching the same soil every day, digging it, planting it, kneeling in it until your knees harden like leather, but ownership remains forever out of reach. The fields feel like yours because you know them so well, but they are not. The stream where you gather water is not yours. The trees you cut for firewood are not yours. The very earth beneath your feet belongs to someone above you, a lord, a noble, a master you may rarely even see. Still, his presence is everywhere, because every harvest reminds you, every tax reminds you, every order carried down through stewards and officials reminds you, the land feeds you, but never truly belongs to you, and perhaps because of that, your connection to it becomes stranger still. You love the fields, you hate the fields, you curse the endless labor they demand, while fearing the thought of losing them. Because without the land, you are nothing, no food, no shelter, no purpose. Everything you are is tied to the earth, even time itself is measured by it. You do not think in months the way future generations will. You think in seasons: planting season, growing season, harvest season, winter. Life moves in circles rather than lines. Every year feels like a repetition of the one before, and after enough time, days blur together. One spring becomes the next, one harvest melts into another, faces age, children grow, parents stoop lower with each passing year, but the land remains, always there, silent, waiting, demanding, and in quiet moments. Perhaps while standing alone at dusk, when the fields glow gold beneath the fading light, you may feel something strange. A deep awareness that the land will outlive you, that long after your hands stop working, after your voice is forgotten, after your body lies beneath churchyard soil, these same fields will remain. Another peasant will walk them, another child will run across them, another weary soul will bend beneath sunrise exactly where you once stood, and perhaps that thought is comforting, or perhaps haunting, to know your entire life is spent bound to something eternal, while your own existence is so painfully brief. Still, there is no use dwelling on such thoughts for long, because the sun is moving lower, work remains unfinished, and tomorrow, as always, the land will demand more. It does not care if you are tired, it does not care if your hands ache, it does not care if your spirit longs for something beyond the horizon. It asks only one thing of you: return, again and again, until your life is spent, because in this world, you are not merely living on the land, you belong to it. There is a strange truth you slowly come to understand as you grow older. Though you wake each morning in your own home, eat beside your own family, and walk the same roads your ancestors walked before you, very little of your life truly belongs to you, not your labor, not your time, not even the land beneath your feet, and in many ways, not even you, because above every peasant stands someone else, someone richer, someone stronger, someone born into power so far beyond your own that it may as well feel ordained by heaven itself. The Lord, you may not see him often, perhaps only from a distance, riding on horseback past the fields while your village bows its head, perhaps only on feast days, when he appears clothed in velvet and fur while you stand in rough wool and mud, perhaps not at all for months at a time, but even when unseen. His presence shapes every corner of your life, because the village where you live, the house you sleep in, the field you work, belongs not to you, but to him. The Lord owns the estate, and you, along with everyone else living upon it, exist beneath his authority. You cannot simply decide to leave. You cannot abandon your labor and wander elsewhere in search of a better life. Your obligations bind you here. Some peasants are technically free men, with limited rights and movement, but many are serfs, bound by law and custom to the land they work. Born into obligation, living in obligation, dying in obligation, if your father served this estate. Then so will you, if your mother owed labor to the Lord's household. Then your family likely will too, and while chains may not hang from your wrists, the invisible weight of duty can feel just as heavy. The Lord may demand labor from you whenever required, several days a week working not your family's small plot, but his fields instead. You plant his grain, harvest his wheat, repair his fences, carry his goods, all while your own needs wait. If his barn collapses, you rebuild it. If his roads wash out, you repair them. If guests arrive at his manor, your chickens, eggs, and grain may be taken to feed them. This is not requested, it is expected, and refusal is dangerous, because while the Lord may protect the village from outside threats, offer military defense, or settle disputes among peasants, that protection comes at a cost. Obedience, always obedience. His word carries the force of law. If he raises taxes, you pay. If he changes rules, you obey. If punishment is ordered, there is little appeal. Justice in your world is not equal. It bends toward power, and power is not yours. Even marriage may require permission. Even inheritance may involve payment. Even death does not free your family entirely. For fees may still be owed when land passes to your children. It is a life where every major moment, birth, marriage, work, death, passes beneath the shadow of someone else's control, and yet perhaps most unsettling of all, is how ordinary this feels. No one around you speaks of rebellion, no one whispers dreams of freedom, because most have never known another way. Children are taught from birth where they stand in the order of the world. God above all, then kings, then lords, then priests and knights, and somewhere far below, peasants. This hierarchy is treated as natural, sacred, even. Many believe questioning it means questioning divine order itself, so you do not ask why one man is born in silk while another is born in mud. You simply accept it, or at least pretend to. Still, there are moments when resentment stirs quietly inside, perhaps while watching carts of grain leave the village after harvest. Knowing much of what your hands produced will never feed your own table, perhaps while seeing the Lord's feast lit warmly through manor windows while your family eats stale bread in darkness, perhaps while kneeling in mud beneath rain, hearing hoofbeats as nobles ride past untouched by the suffering below. In those moments, something bitter may rise in your chest. Not loud enough to speak, not dangerous enough to act upon, but there, a quiet understanding that your life is built on labor, yet the reward belongs elsewhere. Still, bitterness changes nothing. Mourning comes regardless. The Lord's demands continue regardless, and hunger waits patiently for those foolish enough to resist. So you endure, as your parents endured, as their parents endured before them, and in time, perhaps the strangest thing happens. You begin shaping your identity around service itself. Duty becomes habit, habit becomes expectation, expectation becomes normalcy, until one day, you no longer think of yourself as someone denied freedom. You simply think of yourself as what you have always been, a peasant, a worker, a soul born beneath others, expected to carry burdens they will never know. And perhaps that is how systems like this survive longest, not through chains, not through whips, but through generations taught so completely where they belong, they forget to imagine anything else. So when night falls, and you return home aching from labor, and distant torchlight flickers from the Lord's manor atop the hill, you do not curse him aloud, you simply lower yourself onto straw bedding, close your eyes, and prepare for tomorrow, because whether you wish it or not, your life is not fully your own. It never was, and in this world, perhaps it never will be. If there is one thing that defines your life more than anything else, it is work, not celebration, not family, not faith. Work, it shapes your mornings, it fills your afternoons, it follows you into the evening, it determines when you wake, when you eat, when you rest, and often how long you live. There is no part of the year untouched by labor, even when one task ends. another waits, because the life of a medieval peasant is not simply busy, it is endless. Spring arrives first, and with it comes urgency. The frozen ground softens beneath your feet. The air grows gentler. And what little peace winter offered vanishes quickly. Now the fields must be prepared, soil turned, seeds planted, fences repaired, animals bred, every hand in the household works, men, women, children, even the elderly do what they can. Sorting grain, mending tools, carrying water, there is no such thing as someone too young or too old when survival depends on every person contributing. The work begins at sunrise, sometimes before, and often does not end until the sky turns orange with dusk. Then summer comes, the heat rises, the sun burns overhead for long hours, pressing sweat from your skin until your clothes cling damp against your back, but the work does not slow, if anything. It grows heavier, weeds threaten crops, animals break fences, storms damage roofs. Tools split and dull, everything requires maintenance, everything is always wearing down, and if you ignore one small problem too long, it becomes disaster. A broken cart left unrepaired means no harvest transport later, a weak fence means animals escaping, rotting grain means hunger months from now. So every day becomes a battle against time itself. You move constantly, repairing, building, digging, carrying. Hands roughen until blisters become calluses and calluses become skin so thick pain barely registers. Then autumn arrives, and with it, the most important season of all, harvest. These are the weeks upon which everything depends. Every hour matters, every day of sunlight is precious, because if rain comes too early, if frost arrives before the grain is gathered, months of labor may vanish overnight. So the village works with frantic determination, from dawn until darkness. Fields fill with bent backs and moving hands, scythes cut grain in steady rhythm, baskets overflow with vegetables, wagons groan beneath heavy loads. There is exhaustion in every breath, but no one dares slow down. Not now, because this harvest must last through winter. If it fails, nothing else matters, and once the final crops are stored, once the fields lie bare beneath cold winds, you may think rest finally comes, but winter brings its own work. Wood must be chopped, clothes mended, tools repaired, animals sheltered, roofs leak beneath snow and ice, water freezes, firewood disappears faster than expected, even in the quietest season. Labor waits patiently, and so the year turns, again, and again, and again, spring, summer, autumn, winter, each season bringing new burdens but never relief. The strangest part is how little time exists for yourself within all of it. There are no weekends, no vacations, no true holidays beyond scattered feast days and holy observances, and even then, preparation for celebration is often labor itself. Your body belongs to work nearly every waking moment. If you are not in the fields, you are cooking, cleaning, repairing, gathering, carrying, preparing. There is always something unfinished, always something demanding attention, and over time, this endless repetition changes you. You stop thinking in terms of wanting to work. Want has nothing to do with it. Work becomes as natural as breathing. You rise because there is work. You move because there is work. You sleep only because tomorrow requires strength for more work. Even your conversations revolve around labor. How much grain remains? Did the fence hold? Will rain come tomorrow? Has the wheat begun turning? Life narrows until nearly every thought bends around survival. And yet, despite how crushing this sounds, there is strange rhythm in it, a kind of harsh peace, because routine offers certainty. The work is painful. Yes, exhausting. Yes, but familiar, and familiarity can comfort even when it burdens. You know what tomorrow brings, you know your place, you know what is expected. Still, in rare quiet moments, perhaps while pausing in the field as wind moves softly through grain, or while sitting beside the hearth after dusk with aching limbs, a thought may drift through your tired mind. Is this all life is, an endless string of laboring days? one blending into the next until youth becomes age, and age becomes death, no grand purpose revealed. No reward waiting just beyond hardship, only work, only survival, only repetition, and perhaps the answer frightens you, because deep down, you suspect the truth. Yes, this may simply be life, and tomorrow morning, when the first pale light touches your window, your eyes will open once again, your bones will ache once again, your feet will touch the cold floor once again, and without question, without pause, without choice, you will begin again. Because in this world, life is not measured by dreams fulfilled, but by labor endured. By now, your hands know the land better than your own thoughts. You know where the soil is soft and dark, where it resists the blade, where water gathers after rain, and where the ground cracks under summer heat. You know which corners of the field yield the strongest crops, and which patches struggle no matter how carefully they are worked. Every inch of earth has been touched by your labor, shaped by your effort, and endured through your exhaustion, and yet none of it belongs to you. This is something you do not fully understand as a child. When you are young, the fields feel like an extension of your home. You walk them daily, you work them endlessly, and you watch them change with the seasons. They are as familiar as your own hands. So naturally, you assume they are yours. Or at least, partly yours, but as you grow older, the truth settles quietly into your understanding. The land is not yours, it never was, it belongs to the Lord. Everything you plant, everything you harvest, everything you depend on for survival exists under His ownership. You are allowed to use the land, yes. You are allowed to live from it. But ownership remains far above you, distant and unreachable. You are not working your land, you are working on someone else's land, and that difference, though invisible at first, shapes everything about your life. Each year, your family is granted a small strip of field to cultivate for your own survival. It is narrow, often uneven, and rarely enough. You divide it carefully, some for grain, some for vegetables, perhaps a small space for animals if you are fortunate. Every seed matters. Every mistake carries consequence, but this small piece, this fragile portion that feeds your family, is only part of your responsibility, because beyond it lies the Lord's fields. Vast stretches of land that demand your labor just as urgently, if not more so. Several days each week, you must leave your own crops behind and work His instead. You plow His soil, sow His seeds, and harvest His grain, and when the harvest comes, His share comes first. It does not matter if your own stores are low. It does not matter if your family worries quietly about the coming winter. The Lord's portion is taken before yours is secured. It is not seen as cruelty. It is seen as order. This is simply how the world works, and so, you live with a quiet contradiction. You depend entirely on the land. Yet you cannot claim it, you pour your strength into it. Yet its rewards are never fully yours. You protect it from storms, nurture it through drought, and carry its harvest with aching arms. All while knowing that your place upon it is conditional, temporary, even if your family has worked the same soil for generations. Even if your footprints are pressed into its memory year after year. There is no guarantee it will remain yours to use if the Lord chooses to redistribute land. It changes if debts are owed. It changes if fortune turns against you. It can all be taken away, and there is little you can do to stop it. This uncertainty lingers quietly in the background of your life. It is not always spoken of, but it is always felt. It lives in the way your parents speak about the harvest, in the careful planning of every seed, in the tension that arrives with each changing season, because the land gives life, but it does not promise security. Still, despite everything, you form a bond with it, a deep, complicated connection. You know its rhythms. You understand its moods. You feel its generosity and its cruelty as if they were personal. When the crops grow strong, there is pride. When they fail, there is grief, not because the land belongs to you, but because you belong to it. Your life is tied to its success, your survival depends on its cooperation, and over time, ownership begins to feel less important than dependence. You may not own the land, but you cannot exist without it, and perhaps that is an even stronger form of control, because it binds you without chains, it keeps you in place without force, it ensures that no matter how far your thoughts may wander, your body will always return to the same soil. Day after day, season after season, year after year, until one day, your hands will no longer be strong enough to work it, and someone else will take your place, another peasant, another pair of tired hands, another life beginning the same quiet cycle all over again, and the land will remain unchanged, unmoved, waiting patiently for the next person to believe, even briefly, that it might one day be theirs. There is a quiet companion that follows you through nearly every season of your life. It wakes with you in the morning, lingers beside you through long afternoons, and curls beside you at night as you try to sleep. It does not shout. It does not always cause pain. Sometimes it is only a dull emptiness, a faint ache resting low in your stomach. But it is always there. Patient, familiar, and impossible to ignore for very long. Hunger is not an emergency in your world. It is normal. From the time you are old enough to remember, you understand what it means to never feel completely full. Meals are not grand events meant for pleasure. They are measured carefully, portioned thoughtfully, and stretched as far as possible. Food is survival, not indulgence. It exists to keep your body moving, not to satisfy your desires. Most mornings begin with little more than coarse bread and watered ale or thin pottage, perhaps a few scraps of onion or cabbage floating weakly in the broth if fortune has been kind. It is enough to quiet the stomach for a while, but never enough to truly satisfy. By midday, the emptiness begins returning. By evening, your body feels hollow again, and yet, this is simply how life is. No one complains much about being hungry because nearly everyone is. The children grow up with lean faces and narrow shoulders. Adults carry the same tired, gaunt look year after year. You rarely see the kind of abundance that would make a table groan beneath food. That belongs to the wealthy, to nobles behind stone walls and candlelit halls. Not to people like you. Your family eats what it can grow, what it can save, and what it can afford to spare. Grain becomes bread. Oats become porridge. Vegetables become stew. Sometimes eggs if the hens are laying well. Sometimes a little milk if the animals are healthy. Meat is rare, saved for special days, celebrations, or desperate winters when animals can no longer be kept alive. So most days, your meals are simple, predictable, repetitive, the same rough bread, the same weak broth, the same boiled vegetables, again and again until taste itself becomes unimportant. What matters is only that there is something, because there are always whispers of worse times, bad harvests, starving villages, children too weak to stand, families boiling weeds or bark to survive. Everyone knows stories of famine. Some have lived through it. Some still carry the memory in their eyes whenever clouds gather too long over the crops or frost comes too early in autumn. This is why food is never wasted, not a crumb of bread, not a bone, not a spoiled root if it can somehow still be used. You eat slowly, carefully, reverently, almost, because each bite has value. Each bite represents labor, luck, weather, and survival woven together. Food is precious because its absence is always close enough to imagine, and hunger changes the way you think. It sharpens your awareness of every meal. It makes the smell of baking bread almost intoxicating. It makes feast days feel magical not because of celebration, but because for once, there is enough. For once, your stomach feels warm and heavy and full. Those rare moments stay with you. You remember them because they are unusual, because fullness itself becomes a kind of luxury, and yet, over time, the body adapts. Hunger becomes less of a shock and more of a background sensation. You learn to work while hungry. You learn to sleep while hungry. You learn to laugh, pray, and carry on conversation while that faint emptiness lives inside you. It becomes part of your existence, like sore muscles, like dirty hands, like cold mornings, just another discomfort too ordinary to mention. Still, there are darker moments when the hunger deepens beyond normal. Winters when food stores run low too soon. Springs when last year's grain is nearly gone but new crops have not yet grown. These are the hardest weeks, the lean months, when every meal grows smaller and every face in the house becomes more tense. You watch your mother divide bread into thinner slices. You see your father pretending not to be hungry so the younger children can eat a little more. You hear quiet conversations after dark about how much remains, and in those moments, hunger stops being background discomfort and becomes fear, because everyone knows what waits if supplies run out, not discomfort. Not weakness, death. That knowledge hangs over every meal, every harvest, every season. It teaches you gratitude, yes, but also anxiety. You never fully trust abundance because you know how quickly it can vanish. A full basket today means little if winter stretches too long, so even in your best moments, while eating beside the hearth with warm bread in hand and stew steaming in the bowl before you, some part of your mind remains cautious, because you know fullness never lasts. Morning will come, the work will return, and soon enough. So will the hunger, because in this life, hunger is not a rare visitor, it is a constant companion, a quiet reminder that survival is never guaranteed. And that even something as simple as feeling full is a privilege not everyone gets to keep. Meals in a medieval peasant's life are never about indulgence. They are about survival, stretched as far as they can go. The day begins often before dawn with a small portion of coarse bread, perhaps dipped in watered ale or thin broth, sometimes accompanied by whatever vegetables can be spared. The aroma is simple, the flavors muted, but it is enough to quiet the emptiness in the stomach for a few hours. You eat quickly, not out of hunger alone, but because the day's work cannot wait. Every bite must fuel you for labor, not for pleasure. The true luxury is having anything at all. A pot of pottage bubbling on the hearth might include a few scraps of cabbage, onions, or root vegetables. Eggs are treasured, often reserved for children or sick family members, and meat appears only on rare occasions, perhaps when an animal must be culled or when the Lord decides to share some excess from his table. Milk, cheese, and occasionally honey provide variation, but each is precious, rationed carefully. Nothing is wasted. Even the scraps of crust are gathered to feed chickens, or dried and saved for future use. Preparation is slow and methodical, often carried out in the soft glow of the hearth. The family works together, each member assigned a task, stirring the pot, grinding grain, fetching water, or slicing vegetables. Meals are communal, silent at times, punctuated only by the low crackle of fire or the scrape of wooden bowls. Conversation is minimal because every moment is precious. Every task left unfinished could cost time that may be needed for fields, animals, or gathering firewood. Eating becomes almost ritualistic, a quiet pause in an otherwise relentless rhythm of survival. Despite their simplicity, these meals sustain life in ways that are far from trivial. A single hearty loaf can carry a family through a morning of digging and planting. A pot of soup provides warmth during a chilling winter evening. Each meal is both comfort and necessity, a fragile shield against the cold, hunger, and fatigue that stalk daily life. It is never enough to allow excess, yet it is enough to keep bodies moving, hands working, and hope quietly alive. The monotony of food might seem depressing to outsiders, but for peasants it is a grounding constant. Grain and vegetables, legumes, and occasional eggs, these foods teach patience, resourcefulness, and ingenuity. They turn the mundane into a matter of survival skill. Perhaps that is why the peasant mind is so keenly aware of seasonality, knowing when the turnips are ripe, when the wheat will yield, and when wild fruits can be gathered. Every meal is a lesson in timing, careful planning, and respect for the land that produces it. Even simple meals carry a subtle form of celebration. A slightly fuller loaf after harvest, a pot of soup with a few extra vegetables, or a handful of fresh milk can feel like abundance after months of frugality. These small moments are savored quietly, a brief reprieve from the constant pull of labor. They are gentle reminders that survival is possible, that the body can endure, and that life continues, however precariously, on the foundations of these simple foods. And yet, no meal is ever guaranteed. A bad harvest, unexpected frost, or illness can turn abundance into scarcity almost overnight. Families learn to ration carefully, to preserve food, and to make do with what remains. Every bite carries weight. Every morsel is significant. To waste anything is to risk hunger, and hunger is never far behind. Through all this, a peasant learns resilience, patience, and humility. Meals are no longer simply food, they are markers of time, of labor, of survival itself. They are reminders of the delicate balance between the land, the labor, and the life it sustains. And in the quiet moments after eating, as the fire crackles and the day draws to a close, there is a sense of gratitude and calm. Not for luxury or indulgence, but for sustenance, for continuity, for the simple fact that today, at least, life continues. The first thing you notice about a medieval peasant's home is how humble it is. Unlike the lofty stone halls of the Lord's manor, these houses are simple shelters built from what the land provides: rough-hewn wood, wattle and daub walls, mud floors, and thatched roofs. They are small, often just a single room or two, yet they hold an entire life within them. Families live closely together, bodies pressed near each other for warmth. Privacy is a luxury almost entirely unknown, and every movement, every sound, is shared. Inside, the air is heavy with smoke. The hearth burns constantly, a small flame meant for cooking and heat, but the chimney is often little more than a hole in the roof. Smoke curls through the room, hanging in soft grey tendrils above heads and making the eyes water. Yet it is familiar, even comforting. It is the scent of home. The smell of warmth, of labor, of survival. Each morning, the fire is rekindled. Each evening, it flickers softly as meals are prepared and stories whispered. The smoke reminds you that life continues, even in such modest surroundings. Furnishings are sparse. A few wooden benches or stools, a crude table, perhaps a straw mattress or low bed for the family to share. Pots and bowls are earthenware, rough and practical. Tools for work, scythes, hoes, and sickles, lean against walls or hang from hooks. Every object has purpose. Nothing is wasted. Space is precious. Even the children have small corners where they can play or rest, though often their toys are little more than carved sticks or scraps of cloth. The house itself seems alive, shaped by generations of labor, repair, and adaptation. The structure is fragile against the forces of nature. Rain leaks through thatch, wind rattles wooden walls, and cold winters seep into every corner. Yet these homes endure because they must. They are not designed for comfort, but for survival. Within these walls, the family preserves warmth, prepares food, stores what little they have, and protects themselves from the elements as best they can. Each patch of mud or straw is evidence of hands that work tirelessly to make the dwelling livable. Outside, the yard is equally modest. Chickens scratch for food near the walls. Small gardens provide vegetables and herbs. A few animals, goats or pigs, may roam nearby. Every corner is functional. There is no room for decoration or excess. Even a pile of firewood stacked against the wall is practical, a reminder of the long nights ahead and the constant need for fuel. Every element of the home, inside and out, is entwined with survival. Life inside the house is communal and continuous. Cooking, mending clothes, tending animals, and caring for children happen simultaneously in the same space. There is little separation between work, rest, and family. Conversations are quiet and low, punctuated by the crackling fire or the distant sounds of the village outside. Even play is muted, a gentle echo of normalcy in a world dominated by labor and necessity. At night, the home takes on a different quality. Candlelight or the glow of embers casts long, flickering shadows on walls, softening the edges of hardship. The smoke settles into gentle swirls above the heads of sleeping children. Outside, the village lies dark and silent, but within these modest walls, there is warmth, presence, and connection. Despite scarcity and simplicity, there is security in knowing where you belong. The house is small, fragile, and imperfect, yet it is yours to inhabit, and perhaps that is what defines it most. These homes, built from mud, wood, and smoke, carry the resilience of the people who live inside. They are witnesses to years of toil, to generations of laughter and tears, to meals shared and hunger endured. They are unassuming, quiet, and humble, yet they are the foundation of a life lived in endurance, routine, and subtle beauty. Even when the wind rattles the roof, when rain leaks through, when firelight flickers weakly against the dark corners, the home endures. It endures because the people within endure. And it is here, in this modest shelter, that the rhythm of peasant life continues, day after day, season after season, moment by moment. In a peasant's life, family is everything. Survival is never solitary. Every hand, every thought, every ounce of energy is shared and bound together by duty. From the moment a child can walk, they are expected to contribute. Chores are not optional. Fetching water, gathering firewood, tending animals, helping in the fields, these tasks are lessons in responsibility, taught not through words but through practice. Each member of the household understands that their labor is not for personal gain, but for the survival of the whole. Parents carry the weight of providing and protecting, yet even they cannot do it alone. They rely on older children to help younger siblings, on one another to repair the home and prepare meals, and on every family member to know the land and the season as well as they do. Duty is woven into daily life so tightly that it becomes instinct. There is no room for neglect or idleness. Every action, however small, carries consequence. If a child fails to tend the goats, the family may lose milk or meat. If the father does not repair a fence, animals may escape. Survival is built on countless tiny acts of responsibility performed in quiet repetition. Even play and rest are regulated by duty. Children may find a few minutes of leisure after chores, but their time is never fully their own. Work waits for them, a silent observer reminding them of the life they inhabit. Learning is practical, often outside formal schooling. Knowledge is passed down through observation and imitation: how to sow seeds, mend tools, care for animals, predict the weather, and store food for winter. Education, if it can be called that, is inseparable from labor and obligation. The bonds of family extend beyond practical survival. They are emotional, though expressed subtly. A quiet glance at a younger sibling, a shared piece of bread, or the unspoken agreement to divide labor fairly speaks volumes about care and connection. Affection exists, but it is practical, intertwined with the necessities of life. Love is demonstrated through protection, provision, and the endurance of hardship together. The strength of a family is measured not in sentiment, but in how effectively it keeps each member alive through seasons of toil and scarcity. Responsibility is constant. There is always something to tend, repair, or prepare. The sick are cared for, even at the cost of extra labor. Elders are respected because of the wisdom they carry, and their guidance often shapes the decisions of the household. Every decision, when to plant, when to harvest, how to divide limited food, is a balance between immediate survival and future security. The weight of these choices sits heavily on every adult and older child alike. Mistakes are expensive. Lessons must be learned quickly, yet, within this relentless framework, there is resilience. Family life provides a rhythm that balances labor with continuity. Even the smallest victories, a successful harvest, a repaired roof, a child learning a task, offer subtle relief and pride. These moments, however fleeting, sustain the emotional fabric of the household. They remind everyone that their shared effort has meaning, that their perseverance matters, and that life, though harsh, can still contain quiet fulfillment. Duty also extends outward, to the village and the broader community. Families cooperate during planting and harvest, helping one another in ways that prevent total failure. Social bonds are reinforced by shared labor and mutual dependence. Responsibility is never entirely private, it is both personal and communal. To care for your family is to care for the village, and vice versa. Neglecting one's duty risks more than individual loss, it endangers the fragile equilibrium of life itself. Even leisure and celebration are infused with responsibility. Festivals, religious observances, and communal workdays all require participation and contribution. Enjoyment is permitted only insofar as it does not compromise survival. Dancing, feasting, or singing is temporary, an interlude between labor, and always framed by awareness of the seasons, the harvest, and the ever-present demands of daily life, and so, life becomes a network of obligations. Each member of the household learns early that duty is inseparable from existence. Work, care, protection, and guidance form the pillars of family life. From dawn until night, through every season, and across generations, these responsibilities define identity. To be a peasant is to be part of a family, to carry its needs as deeply as your own, and to understand that survival, love, and legacy are inseparable, even in exhaustion, even in hunger, even when the fields are unyielding and the winters harsh. These bonds persist. They are at once a burden and a source of profound stability. And through this intricate dance of duty and care, the peasant household continues, anchored by loyalty, shared labor, and the quiet understanding that each member's effort matters. Family, after all, is both the hearth that warms and the chain that binds, a constant presence in a life defined by necessity. Illness in a medieval peasant's life is quiet, creeping, and often unavoidable. From the moment a child is born, the body is vulnerable to fevers, infections, and injuries that can rarely be treated properly. There are no doctors for the common folk, no apothecaries offering remedies that can fully cure. The village healer may exist, passing down herbal knowledge or whispered incantations, but their resources are limited, their skills modest. When sickness strikes, the body suffers quietly, the mind worries endlessly, and survival depends on endurance, not science. A fever might begin with a subtle shiver, a flush of heat, a headache that dulls awareness. The family watches carefully, knowing that every day matters, that neglect or misjudgment can be fatal. There is no hospital, no skilled surgeon, no medicine beyond what can be gathered from the forest or garden. Willow bark may reduce pain, herbs may soothe digestion, poultices may ease wounds, but the body ultimately decides its own fate. Vigilance is constant, care is instinctive. Every movement, every bite of food, every sip of water is weighed against the demands of a fragile, suffering body. Children are the most vulnerable. Even a simple cold can turn into a life-threatening illness if it spreads unchecked. Parents watch in helpless anxiety, offering the simplest comforts, extra blankets, warm broth, gentle touch, while praying that nature will favor their children. Each cough, each shiver, each pallor is a reminder of how fragile life truly is. Death is a quiet shadow, ever present and not distant. The sick are isolated as best as possible, though space is limited, yet proximity is necessary to tend and protect. Illness transforms the home, softening the rhythms of labor, but never fully halting the daily tasks that ensure survival. Injuries are treated with equal improvisation. Cuts, sprains, or broken bones are bound with cloth or simple splints, often without proper sterilization. Pain is endured rather than fully healed. Work cannot stop entirely. The needs of fields, animals, and family persist, demanding that even the injured rise and contribute. Suffering is woven into life so deeply that resilience becomes second nature. Weakness is tolerated, but survival requires effort from everyone, regardless of personal condition. Food, when available, is adjusted carefully to the ill. Porridge may be softened, broths enriched with herbs, warm drinks offered to ease discomfort. Hydration is maintained, heat applied as necessary. But these measures are simple and limited. There is no guarantee of recovery, only hope, careful observation, and consistent care. Families learn to read subtle signs, changes in breathing, shifts in appetite, the deepening of skin tone, and respond with what little knowledge they possess. Every action carries weight, and every delay could be fatal. Despite scarcity and simplicity, there is compassion. The family becomes a unit of care, each member taking turns watching over the sick, offering support, or performing chores so the ill can rest. The community, too, may help in small ways. A neighbor may share herbs, a passerby may bring food, a distant relative may lend advice. Even without formal medicine, these acts of shared humanity become lifelines. The village functions as a network of quiet support, each contribution amplifying the fragile chance of survival. Illness teaches lessons that last a lifetime. It teaches patience, observation, and caution. It instills humility and respect for the fragility of life. Every recovery is celebrated quietly. Every loss mourned deeply. Sickness reveals the limits of human control, showing that despite endless labor and careful planning, the body is not always obedient. It reminds the peasant that endurance, resilience, and communal care are the most reliable forms of protection, and so, life continues, balanced precariously between health and weakness, labor and rest, survival and loss. Families adapt, routines shift, and small victories are savored. Every cough or fever is met with quiet vigilance, every injury with careful attention. Even without modern medicine, life persists. The sick are tended with as much skill as knowledge allows, hope maintained with gentle hands, and the rhythm of peasant life endures. Delicate but unbroken, season after season, year after year. Religion in a medieval peasant's life is both a quiet refuge and a subtle weight. From sunrise prayers to the tolling of the village bell, faith touches every corner of existence. It offers structure, explanation, and hope in a world that can feel capricious and harsh. Illness, hunger, and loss are not only natural misfortunes but signs of a divine order that must be respected and appeased. For peasants, belief is inseparable from daily life. Even when joy is rare, the rituals of worship provide a sense of rhythm and purpose, a moment of solace amid endless toil. The church, often the center of the village, is more than a building. Its stone walls, simple wooden pews, and stained glass windows evoke awe. Entering the sanctuary, a peasant feels the contrast between the quiet grandeur of faith and the simplicity of their home. Candles flicker softly in the corners, incense drifts through the air, and the soft murmur of prayers carries like a comforting melody. Even a brief visit offers warmth, light, and reassurance, a reminder that life has meaning beyond labor and survival, yet religion is also a source of fear. Sin is punished, both in this life and the next, and divine judgment is ever present. Stories of souls condemned for laziness, gluttony, or disobedience shape behavior as much as social pressure. Children are taught from an early age that their actions have consequences, not only for themselves but for their families standing before God. Guilt and reverence are inseparable companions. The line between comfort and dread is thin, and the mind walks it constantly, learning to honor faith while hoping to avoid wrath. Religious observance is practical as well as spiritual. Holidays mark the calendar, offering temporary respite from labor. Feast days are celebrated with simple meals, shared with family and neighbors, and accompanied by communal songs or quiet reflection. Rituals connect individuals to the cycles of nature and labor. Planting, harvesting, and winter preparations are all infused with prayers for protection and blessing. Even the act of giving a portion of harvest or produce to the church reinforces a sense of duty and interconnectedness. Faith is woven into every act, a constant thread through daily life. Priests and monks carry influence that extends beyond spiritual guidance. Their words shape behavior, inspire obedience, and reinforce social order. Peasants often listen attentively to sermons, understanding that divine authority mirrors earthly hierarchies. The moral lessons embedded in scripture and parables are internalized through repetition, guiding choices in the fields, at home, and in dealings with neighbors. Religion becomes both map and compass, directing life's path with gentle insistence. At the hearth, faith is expressed quietly. Morning prayers before work, brief blessings over meals, and evening supplications before sleep punctuate life with calm reflection. These rituals provide comfort, a sense of safety, and the reassurance that suffering has purpose. Even children learn the rhythm. Their small voices echoing words they do not fully understand, trusting in tradition, and in the care of unseen guardians. Religious observance is practical as well as spiritual. Holidays mark the calendar, offering temporary respite from labor. Feast days are celebrated with simple meals, shared with family and neighbors, and accompanied by communal songs or quiet reflection. Rituals connect individuals to the cycles of nature and labor. Planting, harvesting, and winter preparations are all infused with prayers for protection and blessing. Even the act of giving a portion of harvest or produce to the church reinforces a sense of duty and interconnectedness. Faith is woven into every act, a constant thread through daily life. Priests and monks carry influence that extends beyond spiritual guidance. Their words shape behavior, inspire obedience, and reinforce social order. Peasants often listen attentively to sermons, understanding that divine authority mirrors earthly hierarchies. The moral lessons embedded in scripture and parables are internalized through repetition, guiding choices in the fields, at home, and in dealings with neighbors. Religion becomes both map and compass, directing life's path with gentle insistence. At the hearth, faith is expressed quietly. Morning prayers before work, brief blessings over meals, and evening supplications before sleep punctuate life with calm reflection. These rituals provide comfort, a sense of safety, and the reassurance that suffering has purpose. Even children learn the rhythm. Their small voices echoing words they do not fully understand, trusting in tradition, and in the care of unseen guardians. Life as a peasant is never entirely your own. From dawn to dusk, a subtle, constant force presses upon every action, the lord of the manor. Even if you never see him, his presence is felt in the weight of obligations, the rules that dictate labor, and the invisible threads that tie your survival to his will. You do not own the land you work, it belongs to him. Every seed sown, every harvest gathered, every building repaired is an extension of his authority, and your body, time, and effort belong, in part, to another. The Lord is both distant and omnipresent. His estate looms in the background, a stone manor atop the hill, guards patrolling, banners flapping in the wind. Peasants glimpse him during rare inspections, or through messengers delivering decrees. The knowledge of his authority shapes behavior continuously. Every act of labor, every thought of leisure, every conversation is shadowed by obedience. Even minor acts of disobedience are considered, for misstep can result in punishment or deprivation. The Lord's power is subtle yet absolute, a quiet tension woven into daily life. Labor is directed according to his need. Fields must be plowed, harvested, and maintained to serve not only the family but the demands of the estate. Taxes and tithes, extracted in produce or coin, drain the hard-earned fruit of months of toil. There is little room for negotiation. The rhythm of life is dictated externally: when to work, when to rest, and how much is allowed to remain for the household. Even small victories, the saving of extra grain or care of animals, must be carefully balanced against the unspoken awareness of control. Peasants internalize this presence. Fear, respect, and resignation coexist. Children grow up learning that authority exists beyond the family and village, that life is bounded by invisible rules and enforced hierarchies. The knowledge of the Lord's oversight shapes morals, manners, and habits. Obedience is survival. Defiance can be dangerous. Even silence becomes a tool. Quiet labor, careful speech, and measured movements are the ways to navigate a world where someone always watches. Punishment is a constant reminder. The overseer may enforce fines, demand extra work, or exact penalties for neglect, real or perceived. Stories circulate of harsh treatment, public reprimands, or the withholding of essential resources. This creates a cautious vigilance within the peasant mind, to avoid attention, to perform adequately, to never overreach. The presence of authority transforms everyday life into a delicate balance of duty, endurance, and subtle calculation, yet the Lord's influence is not only fear. Sometimes it is protection, guidance, or even occasional provision. During hard winters, after poor harvests, or in times of disaster, aid may be distributed: grain, firewood, or livestock. These acts, however, reinforce dependence. They are reminders that the peasant's life is inseparable from the estate's control, and that survival relies on adherence, obedience, and service. Gratitude and caution are entwined. Comfort and fear exist side by side. Community life is equally shaped by hierarchy. Festivals, marketplaces, and public gatherings are overseen. Rules determine access, behavior, and conduct. Even relationships between neighbors are subtly influenced by the overarching authority. Discussions, disputes, and even celebrations are moderated by the awareness of the Lord's presence, creating an undercurrent of quiet tension in communal life. Social structure, obedience, and hierarchy are embedded into every interaction. In private, peasants may dream of freedom, of autonomy, of a life unconstrained by invisible rulers, yet reality rarely allows it. The land, the labor, and the seasons continue to demand obedience. Independence is a concept more imagined than attainable. Even moments of personal satisfaction, a well-tended garden, a child's success, or a repaired roof, exist within the framework of oversight and expectation. The presence of the Lord is a silent companion, shaping life with invisible hands, and so, peasants navigate a world where control is woven into existence. Labor, family, and daily routines are inseparable from authority. Life is measured by service and survival, obedience and vigilance. The Lord may be distant, but his influence is near, constant, and inescapable. The rhythm of a peasant's day, season after season, year after year, is conducted under the quiet weight of this presence, a reminder that freedom, in its truest sense, is a dream deferred. In the life of a medieval peasant, the weight of taxes is never distant. Every year, season, and harvest carries a hidden burden, invisible yet pressing on each hand, each footstep in the field. Taxes are not merely numbers or coins, they are measured in grain, in livestock, in sweat, and sometimes in body. The Lord's demand is absolute. A portion of every harvest is claimed, sometimes small, sometimes crippling, and every peasant understands that failure to comply can bring punishment. Obedience is no longer a choice, it is survival. The labor required to meet these demands is relentless. Fields must be plowed, sown, and harvested not only for sustenance but to satisfy obligations to the Lord. Beyond the family's immediate needs, peasants toil under additional burdens, repairing roads, maintaining fences, gathering firewood, or serving in the Lord's household or workshops. These duties are known as corvée labor, mandatory and uncompensated. Days stretch endlessly, blending one into another, punctuated only by the rhythm of the seasons, the rise and fall of the sun, and the constant demand of work. Even minor mistakes carry weight. A miscounted basket of grain, a missed turn in the plowing, or delayed contribution can invite reprimand. Punishment may be subtle, a stern warning, the confiscation of excess food, or severe, including fines, extra work, or public chastisement. Fear exists in tandem with routine. Every motion in the fields, every decision about how to divide time, is influenced by the knowledge of oversight. Compliance is a form of protection, and defiance can endanger not just the individual but the family. Obedience extends beyond labor into social behavior. Respect for hierarchy, vigilance in actions, and careful speech are ingrained from childhood. Gossip is dangerous, laziness unacceptable, and every interaction carries the unspoken measure of propriety. Life becomes a continuous exercise in awareness, a delicate balance between fulfilling duties, preserving resources, and maintaining safety. Even small moments of leisure are moderated by the ever-present understanding of obligation. The psychological weight of taxation and labor is profound. Hunger is common, yet food must be shared with the Lord first. Sleep may be brief, yet labor is unrelenting. The human body is pushed to its limits, molded by the demands of necessity. Yet within this hardship, a rhythm emerges. The seasons dictate the work, creating patterns that provide structure, predictability, and a strange comfort in their repetition. Obedience, while born of necessity, becomes a stabilizing force, a guide through a life that might otherwise feel entirely chaotic. Communal labor reinforces obedience. During harvest or communal repairs, peasants work together under the watchful eyes of overseers. Every task completed is a silent affirmation of discipline, every collective effort a demonstration of adherence to social order. The village functions as a cooperative unit, each family reliant on the others to meet obligations. Cooperation and compliance become survival strategies, blending social cohesion with necessity. Even in moments of scarcity, resilience surfaces. Families learn to manage, ration, and adapt, finding small ways to preserve dignity and sustenance while meeting obligations. Children grow understanding the value of labor, the importance of discipline, and the consequences of defiance. Life is harsh, yet it teaches lessons that endure: endurance, foresight, patience, and the quiet wisdom of compliance. Taxes, labor, and obedience shape the essence of peasant existence. They are inseparable from identity, entwined with the rhythms of the land, the seasons, and social hierarchy. They govern daily life, limit freedom, and demand sacrifice. Yet, they also provide order, define roles, and establish a continuity that ensures survival. Each day's toil is a silent contract with life itself, a promise to endure, to submit when necessary, and to persevere despite adversity. And as the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across fields and cottages, the weight of obligations lingers. Work remains unfinished, grain must be measured, and tomorrow will bring more labor, more tax, more duty. Obedience is never complete, it is a continual act, a quiet rhythm of life that defines the peasant experience. And yet, even within these demands, a subtle pride persists, the knowledge that survival, endurance, and resilience are testament to human fortitude. Even in a life bound by labor, obligation, and scarcity, small moments of joy persist. They are fleeting, quiet, and often unnoticed by the outside world, yet for the peasant, they are lifelines. A child's laughter as they chase a chicken through the yard, the smell of freshly baked bread filling a humble cottage, or the sight of a field finally yielding its harvest, these instances offer respite, brief glimpses of happiness within a life otherwise dictated by duty and survival. They are not extravagant or loud, but gentle, subtle, and deeply human. Work itself occasionally brings satisfaction. The precision of a well-plowed furrow, the successful repair of a worn roof, or the completion of a day's harvest can evoke quiet pride. It is a satisfaction rooted not in excess but in competence, mastery, and contribution. A peasant may not own the land they tend, but they can cultivate it skillfully, and that act of creation provides a rare, gentle sense of accomplishment. Even the simplest successes, a warm fire, a mended garment, a healthy animal, become reasons to smile, to pause, and to breathe. Community gatherings, though often tied to labor or obligation, also harbor joy. Festivals, seasonal celebrations, and religious feasts allow peasants to step outside the relentless rhythm of work. Children dance, songs are sung, and simple games entertain in the fading daylight. Laughter, though restrained, carries through the village streets. Neighbors share stories, a sweet loaf of bread, or a helping hand in a quiet gesture of camaraderie. These fleeting moments are shared experiences, reinforcing bonds and providing comfort that transcends the hardships of daily life. Within the household, intimacy creates its own quiet delight. Parents exchange smiles over children's antics, siblings share whispered jokes while performing chores, and couples find tenderness in small gestures, holding hands while working, sharing a piece of fruit, or exchanging a glance of mutual understanding. Love and care, though expressed modestly, offer an enduring source of emotional sustenance. It is in these small acts of connection that the human spirit finds resilience and the capacity for hope. Nature itself provides subtle pleasures. The first bloom of spring, the hum of bees near a flowering garden, the gentle fall of rain on thatched roofs, these simple wonders are savored quietly. They are moments where the mind can drift, where attention can relax from the relentless pull of obligation. Even the changing light of dawn or dusk, painting the village in muted golds and soft shadows, becomes a reminder that beauty exists even in labor and struggle. Storytelling, too, offers comfort. By the hearth in the evening, after the work is done, a parent or elder may recount tales of distant lands, heroic deeds, or simple folk wisdom. Children listen with wide eyes, momentarily transported beyond the fields and cottages that define their lives. These narratives, though modest, ignite imagination, curiosity, and laughter. They are small escapes, gentle awakenings of the mind. Moments where joy can exist free from immediate survival. Even simple meals become occasions for pleasure. A well-cooked stew, the sweetness of honey, or a shared piece of bread becomes more than sustenance, it is a small celebration of life itself. Peasants learn to savor these flavors, appreciating their rarity and the effort it took to produce them. Each bite can be a moment of gratitude, a quiet acknowledgement of what has been achieved despite hardship. Small moments of joy are often private, internal, or shared in intimate company. They do not erase the burdens of life, but they create pockets of peace and comfort. They remind peasants that existence is not only a series of obligations but also an opportunity to notice beauty, experience connection, and feel fleeting happiness. These glimpses of delight, quiet yet profound, are what sustain the spirit through years of labor, seasons of scarcity, and the ever-present weight of survival. Even under the shadow of authority, taxes, illness, and fear, these small joys illuminate life with subtle warmth. They are the soft threads that weave resilience into the human heart. And though they may pass quickly, like morning mist over the fields, their memory lingers, providing quiet strength and a gentle reassurance that even in hardship, life can offer moments of wonder, connection, and calm happiness. Winter arrives not as a moment, but as a slow fading of the world. The colors of the fields dull first, then the air itself seems to grow heavier, quieter. The wind changes its voice, carrying a sharper edge, and the earth hardens beneath every step. For a medieval peasant, winter is not simply a season. It is a test of everything that has been prepared during the warmer months. It is the time when the land stops giving and begins to demand patience instead. Inside the village cottages, life contracts inward. The fields that once stretched endlessly now lie empty under frost, and most work shifts toward preservation. Firewood becomes as valuable as grain. Families measure it carefully, calculating how long it must last before spring. The hearth becomes the center of existence, not just for warmth but for survival itself. Without it, the cold seeps into bones, into sleep, into thought. Food, too, becomes more uncertain. Stored grain must be rationed with discipline. Every handful matters. Porridge grows thinner, bread smaller, and meals more repetitive as supplies are guarded against the unknown length of the season. There is always a quiet calculation happening in the background of daily life: how much remains, how long it must last, and what will happen if it does not. The animals feel winter first. Chickens become fewer in number, livestock grows weaker, and the burden of keeping them alive becomes heavier. Some are slaughtered early to prevent total loss later, their meat preserved carefully if possible. Even so, there is never enough certainty. A single harsh storm can undo weeks of preparation, and everyone knows it. The weather itself becomes a kind of authority. Snowfall can trap entire villages in silence. Roads disappear under white layers, and travel becomes rare or impossible. Communication with neighboring settlements slows, and isolation deepens. In those weeks, the world feels smaller, as if only the village and the frozen fields exist, suspended beneath a gray sky that does not change. Yet even in this harshness, life does not stop. It adapts. Indoors, families repair tools, mend clothing, and prepare for the next cycle of work. Children learn quieter tasks, staying close to the hearth while listening to the wind press against the walls. Elders speak more often during winter, sharing memories, advice, and warnings that feel more immediate when the world outside is still and unforgiving. Uncertainty defines the season more than cold ever could. No one knows exactly how long it will last, how much food will remain, or whether the next thaw will bring relief or disappointment. This lack of certainty shapes every decision. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is assumed. Everything is held carefully, as if the future itself is fragile. And yet, there is also a strange stillness in winter. The forced pause in fieldwork creates moments of reflection that do not exist in other seasons. The pace of life slows, not by choice, but by necessity. Within that stillness, thoughts wander further, conversations deepen, and the presence of family becomes more pronounced. The world outside may be hostile, but inside the cottage, life gathers closer together. When storms rage outside, the sound of wind against thatched roofs becomes constant, almost rhythmic. It reminds everyone of vulnerability, but also of endurance. Each passing night survived is a small victory. Each morning light that breaks through grey skies is a reassurance that time is still moving forward. Winter does not bring comfort. It brings endurance. It brings patience tested daily. It brings the reminder that survival is never guaranteed, only managed. And as the cold stretches on, the peasant learns once again that life is not measured in ease, but in the ability to continue even when everything around seems frozen in place. Fear in a peasant's life is rarely loud. It does not arrive like a sudden storm or a single moment of terror. Instead, it lingers quietly in the background of every season, every decision, every uncertain glance toward the sky. It is the fear of loss, slow, total, and often irreversible. Not just the loss of wealth, because wealth is already scarce, but the loss of stability itself. The loss of food, shelter, land, or the fragile balance that keeps a family alive. Everything you depend on is vulnerable. A single failed harvest can undo an entire year of labor. A disease among livestock can erase a crucial source of survival. A harsh winter, a flood, or an unexpected drought can shift the world from manageable hardship into desperate uncertainty. Nothing feels fully secure, because nothing truly is. Even the land itself, which seems constant beneath your feet, is not guaranteed. It can be taken, reassigned, or reduced depending on decisions made far beyond your control. You may work the same fields for years, even generations, yet never fully possess them. That uncertainty creates a quiet tension that never fully leaves the mind. Every season carries the unspoken question, will it still be there next year? Inside the home, fear is often shared but rarely spoken aloud. Parents calculate silently, watching stored grain, counting livestock, estimating how long supplies might last if something goes wrong. Children sense the worry without understanding it fully. They notice the longer pauses before meals are served, the careful portioning of food, the small hesitations in adult voices when discussing the future. Illness deepens this fear. A sick family member is not only a personal concern but a potential crisis. Without reliable medicine, recovery is uncertain, and every fever or wound carries weight. A single loss can shift the balance of a household, reducing labor, weakening survival capacity, and increasing pressure on those who remain. Grief and fear often overlap, forming a quiet emotional burden that lingers long after recovery or loss. There is also the fear of authority, not always present, but always possible. A sudden demand, a new tax, a punishment for failure, or an unexpected obligation can change everything quickly. Compliance is necessary, but it does not erase anxiety. Instead, it teaches caution, restraint, and constant awareness of consequences. Even speech and behavior are shaped by the possibility of repercussions. Nature itself becomes another source of uncertainty. The sky is watched closely. Clouds that gather too early or frost that arrives too late can signal trouble ahead. Rain is both blessing and risk, depending on timing. Weather is never just weather, it is a force that can determine survival or scarcity. This dependence on forces beyond control deepens the sense of fragility that defines peasant life, and yet, fear does not always lead to despair. It also sharpens awareness. It teaches preparation, patience, and careful living. Families learn to store, repair, and ration. They learn to anticipate rather than react. Fear becomes a teacher, shaping behavior into patterns of caution that increase the chances of survival, even if they never remove uncertainty entirely. In quieter moments, this fear transforms into reflection. Sitting by the hearth at night, listening to the wind outside, a peasant might think not only of what could be lost, but of what still remains. A roof that holds. A fire that burns. A family that is still together. These small certainties become anchors against the larger unknown. Still, the feeling never fully disappears. It waits beneath daily routines, beneath conversation, beneath even moments of calm. The fear of losing everything is not dramatic, it is constant. A background awareness that life is always balanced on fragile ground, and so, each day is lived carefully. Not in panic, but in quiet vigilance. Work is done with intention. Resources are guarded. Relationships are maintained. Because in this world, survival is not just about what you have, it is about how long you can keep it before it slips away. By this stage of life, there is a quiet realization that settles into the mind like dust into old wood. This is not a life you chose. It is not a path selected through thought or ambition. It is simply the one you were born into, and the one that continues regardless of desire, exhaustion, or resistance. For a medieval peasant, life is not built around possibility, it is built around continuation. From childhood, every step has been guided by necessity. The fields, the cottage, the village, the seasons, all of it forms a structure that is both familiar and unchangeable. You learn early that there are boundaries you cannot cross, not because they are physically locked, but because they are socially and economically fixed. The world is not open, it is layered, and most of those layers are above you. There is rarely a moment when escape feels like a real option. The idea of leaving the village, of changing one's status, of becoming something else entirely exists more as a distant thought than an achievable goal. Even imagining it feels fragile, like trying to hold smoke. Every path eventually leads back to labor, to land, to obligation. The rhythm of life reinforces this feeling. Each year repeats similar cycles: planting, harvesting, winter survival, repair, and recovery. Within that repetition, time begins to feel less like a journey and more like a loop. You age, the seasons change, children grow. Elders fade, but the structure remains untouched. It is not a system that evolves around you. You are the one who moves within it. Even small choices are framed by limitation. What to eat depends on what is available. When to rest depends on when work allows. Where to go depends on obligation, weather, or authority. Freedom, in the modern sense, is not a concept that fits easily into this reality. Life is defined more by what cannot be done than by what can, yet there is no dramatic rebellion against this understanding. Instead, there is acceptance, not necessarily peaceful, but practical. Resistance would not change the structure of the world, and so energy is directed elsewhere, toward survival, toward family, toward making each day manageable. The mind adapts to what the body already knows. Occasionally, someone leaves. A traveler passes through, or a young person disappears toward distant towns or unknown lands. These moments create brief ripples of curiosity and imagination. But they are rare and often uncertain. For most, the village remains both origin and endpoint. The weight of permanence becomes most visible in quiet moments. Standing at the edge of a field at dusk, watching the same horizon you have always known, it is easy to feel the stillness of everything around you. Not stillness in motion, but stillness in possibility. The land does not promise change. It simply continues. And yet, even within this unescapable structure, life persists with a strange dignity. There is meaning in repetition. There is identity in labor. There is a form of belonging in being tied so closely to a place, even if that bond is not freely chosen. The world may not offer escape, but it offers familiarity, and within that familiarity, a kind of emotional grounding takes shape. People learn to find value in what is immediate, the warmth of a fire, the presence of family, the completion of a day's work. These are not substitutes for freedom, but they are anchors against the weight of uncertainty. They allow life to feel lived, even if it is constrained, and so, the realization remains, this life will not change easily. Not through desire, not through longing, not through quiet hope alone. It is a structure far larger than any single person, shaped by generations before and those yet to come. To be a peasant is to live inside that structure. Not outside it. Not beyond it, inside it, and once that understanding settles fully, it becomes part of everything: thought, movement, breath, a life not escaped, but endured. Time in a medieval peasant's life does not announce itself loudly. It does not arrive with clocks or schedules or measured precision. Instead, it moves quietly, almost invisibly, marked only by the rhythm of the land and the body. You notice time not as something you control, but as something that passes through you, season by season, year by year, without ever truly pausing. There are no calendars in the modern sense, no strict divisions of hours that shape the day. Instead, time is read through sunlight, weather, and labor. Dawn signals beginning. Dusk signals ending. Between them lies work, repetition, and endurance. Even rest is not separate from time, it is simply a brief pause within it. Never fully detached from what comes next, silence becomes one of the most familiar companions. Not an empty silence, but a full one. The quiet of early mornings before work begins, when smoke rises slowly from cottage chimneys and the village is still half asleep. The hush of midday heat when even birds seem less active. The deep, heavy silence of winter nights when snow absorbs sound and the world feels distant and softened. Within this silence, life continues steadily. Hands move without needing instruction. Feet follow familiar paths to fields, wells, and barns. Tasks are performed not through planning but through memory and habit. Over time, action becomes instinct, and instinct replaces thought. The body learns the rhythm of existence so completely that it no longer requires constant awareness. Memory itself becomes tied to seasons rather than dates. A harsh winter is remembered not by year, but by cold. A good harvest is remembered by abundance. A sickness is remembered by its duration rather than its exact time. Life becomes a series of impressions layered upon one another, blending together as years accumulate. Children grow within this quiet structure without noticing its weight. They experience time as expansion, each year bringing strength, responsibility, and understanding. Adults, however, begin to experience it differently. Time feels slower in moments of hardship, yet faster in hindsight. Days of labor blend into one another, creating the sensation that life is both long and short at once. Even speech reflects this relationship with time. Conversations are often brief, practical, and shaped by necessity. Long discussions are rare, not because of lack of thought, but because time is always needed elsewhere. Every spoken word exists within the boundaries of work waiting to be done. Yet within this silence, there is observation. Peasants become deeply aware of subtle changes: the shift in wind before rain, the first thaw after frost, the sound of birds returning in spring. These details, often unnoticed in faster lives, become essential markers of survival and continuity. Time is not measured, it is felt. As years pass, the village itself changes slowly. New structures appear where old ones once stood. Faces shift as children grow and elders disappear. But the overall shape of life remains consistent, as if the village itself is held in place by something larger than time. Change happens, but only gradually, almost respectfully, and so, time does not feel like something escaping. It feels like something unfolding quietly around everything. There is no rush in it, no urgency beyond survival. Only continuation. Only passage. In the stillness of night, when work is done and firelight dims, a peasant might sit in silence and feel this passage more clearly. Not as fear, but as awareness. The understanding that days have turned into seasons, and seasons into years, and yet life remains largely unchanged in its structure, and in that realization lies a strange calmness. Not happiness. Not escape. But acceptance of rhythm, because in this world, time does not ask to be controlled, it only asks to be lived through, quietly, one day at a time. By the time you reach the end of this life, there is no grand conclusion waiting for you. No sudden change. No dramatic release. Only a quiet softening, as if the world itself is slowly lowering its voice around you. You have lived through seasons that repeated themselves like breath. You have worked under sun, rain, frost, and wind. You have known hunger not as a moment, but as a companion. You have carried responsibility that never asked if you were ready. And now, in the stillness of age, even those burdens begin to feel distant, as if they belong to someone else's memory. The body grows slower. Movements become careful, then fewer. The fields that once demanded your strength now belong to younger hands. You watch them from a distance, not with resentment, but with a quiet recognition. The cycle continues, as it always has. The land does not pause for any one life. It simply receives the next. Inside the cottage, life feels softer now. Firelight becomes more important than daylight. The sounds of the village fade into something less urgent. Conversations shorten. Silence lengthens. And in that silence, there is no fear left to fight, only reflection. You think back, not in sharp images, but in fragments. The smell of wet soil in spring. The weight of grain in your hands. The sound of rain on a thatched roof. The distant voices of family in a room filled with smoke and warmth. None of it feels distant or close, it simply feels like it existed. And that you moved through it. There is no desire to escape anymore. Only the understanding that everything you were was shaped by this place. The land, the labor, the seasons, the quiet struggles, they did not just surround your life. They formed it. And now, as everything slows, even that understanding becomes gentle. Outside, the world continues without pause. Fields are still worked. Children are still born. Seasons still turn. Life does not notice the individual fading of a single story. And perhaps that is not cruelty. Perhaps it is simply the way the world has always been. The fire in the hearth burns lower now. Not gone, just quieter. Shadows stretch softly across the walls. The air feels heavier, but not uncomfortable. More like rest arriving slowly, without announcement. You close your eyes for longer moments. Not to escape, but to settle. The sounds of the village become distant, like something carried by wind rather than lived beside. And in that fading awareness, there is no struggle left to hold on, only peace in letting go of movement, only calm in no longer needing to endure, only stillness that asks nothing of you. And as the final warmth of the fire flickers across the room, there is a feeling, not of ending in the dramatic sense, but of returning. As if life itself was always a cycle of waking, working, and now finally resting. No more fields, no more winters to prepare for, no more hunger to anticipate. Only silence, stretching gently like a soft night sky over an old village, and in that silence, as everything slows into quiet darkness, there is a final thought, soft as breath, light as fading embers. Good night, rest now, you have carried enough. The world will continue without your effort for a while, and for you. There is only sleep.